When Dragon's Rising was released, we were introduced to a multitude of new main characters, and one of them was of course the character of WyldFyre. And she has definitely made a lasting impression on the show, and of course there are people who don't like her, but there are a lot of people who definitely do, including Kevin Burke, who has noted that she is in fact his favourite character. But there is something that has come to my attention as of Dragon's Rising Season 3 Part 1, and it has become a glaring issue for me when it comes to the character of WyldFyre, and I know the exact point where it began, and I also think it has become an overall issue when it comes to her, because in my opinion, she has started to not really progress as a character, and has even devolved in a lot of different ways. But to understand why I think she has gone in this direction, I need to go back to when she was first introduced. When WyldFyre was given to us in Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, she was very feral, I think that's the best way of putting it. She was very impulsive, she was very much driven by her base instincts, and that of course makes complete sense because she was raised by dragons. But of course she eventually came on to become the Elemental Master of Heat, and I do think it's a fairly good elemental power to have, and it definitely did cause some confusion in the show, because a lot of people had the overall question of, is it actually just the elemental power of fire? But luckily it was confirmed that they are in fact separate elements. But during the time where we've had her in the show, she has gone from, like I said, a more feral state to a much more evolved version of herself, and you can see the exact reasons and the exact ways that she did come to get to this point. And the main driving force for this evolve of her character was of course her joining the ninja team, but the fact is that even when she did join this team, she was still very much in this feral state. She still had that impulsive nature, and it did often get in the way of the ninja team. And there's no better way to show that off than when in Season 1 Part 2 they were after the Dragon Cores, and ultimately WyldFyre interfering and messing with the lava tides is the reason why she actually did prevent Kai and her having an easy time getting their hands on that core, and it did lead to a whole lot of issues because of it, and she had to redeem herself in the lava tide's eyes to actually get said Dragon Core. Even though ultimately it still failed, that was still the point of the actual mission. But it was here where she started to learn more and more off of Kai specifically, because ultimately Kai found himself seeing a lot of himself within WyldFyre. A lot of his earlier self was definitely there, the rashness, the hot-headedness, all of it, and Kai made it his personal mission to be able to help WyldFyre navigate these emotions. And the beauty of it is the fact that she was then listening to Kai, she was taking Kai's advice and she was truly taking it to heart, and you can see that by the end of Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, she truly did come to like and care for Kai and the ninja team in general. Of course she still had her rashness, such as her belief that the team would be lost without her, but the fact is that she became more tame, she became more trustworthy, she became more reliable, and it was really nice to see, and it definitely continued. Season 2 Part 1 was a very interesting time for WyldFyre, because even though after a year of being with the ninja team, she was still having those impulsive and those rash feelings. Of course, she snuck onto the Destiny's Bounty when the ninja were going off to seek their new master. But the fact is that even though WyldFyre still had those moments, she was much more of a civilized person. She was listening to the ninja team, she was taking Kai's advice to heart, she was ultimately acting more like a team player, and she was acting more calm when in the face of certain things happening. I mean, no better thing to look at than when she discovered that Egalt actually was suffering from wasting sickness. The fact is that she wasn't rash, she wasn't harsh, she wasn't overbearing when it came to it, all she truly wanted to do was help him, and she was in such a calm nature when she was actually doing this. And that calm nature does come down to the fact that she was truly listening to the people around her. And I think honestly, it was really interesting to see that evolved version of WyldFyre. And honestly, I really did enjoy that. And then of course when Season 2 Part 1 ended and she lost her mentor being Kai, of course she became much more angry, but the fact is that she still was maintaining a more tame nature, and instead of lashing out being angry, she ultimately tried to live up to the mantle that Kai had. She thought she truly lost Kai in that moment, so she thought that she would take the mantle of the Red Ninja to honour him, and instead of being rash and being impulsive like she would have in Season 1, the fact is that even though she needed to vent her anger, she was still more of a civilized and tame person, and the WyldFyre shorts proves that. She took 3 baby dragons and she took them back to her mother, and in that moment she realized that instead of being angry and lashing out to the world, she needed to do what she needed to do. And that was honestly fantastic, and as of those shorts, I truly thought WyldFyre was continuing to be in a fantastic place. But Season 2 Part 2 was the introduction to the ultimate downfall of the character of WyldFyre. And that, in the most ironic sense, it was giving her a love interest, and that was Roby. Now, this isn't a video of me bashing the fact that she got into a relationship, because ultimately, I do think it was a fantastic move for her, and it was very interesting to see her in that situation. But the fact is that the introduction of Roby caused a lot of issues, and caused WyldFyre to essentially fold back into her old personality. And I don't think it was a demonstration on how she should have or how she had to do that because of the introduction of him. I simply think it was down to the fact that that introduction and the things that happened to Roby is ultimately what caused the writers essentially to write her more in the way of Season 1. The fact is that when Roby was decayed by Kurt in Season 3 Part 1, you get to see WyldFyre become so much more impulsive, so much more rash, so much more irrational, and I know of course it was her loved one and it's a natural reaction, but the fact is that WyldFyre doesn't act anywhere even near remotely like how she would have in a previous season. I mean, of course she doesn't have that same relationship with Eagles, but the fact is that she attempted to be so much more calm and so much civilized in the face of a difficult situation, but in this instance she just wasn't. And it's honestly just more in line with how she reacted with Heatwave in Season 1 Part 2. The fact is that even though it's someone she cares about, a version of WyldFyre that was much later after this point of Heatwave should have handled it in a very different way. But the fact is that she completely recessed into a Season 1 feel. And I think that's ultimately the issue. This was the perfect moment to demonstrate the evolved nature of WyldFyre. But the fact is that she just didn't. And she just continued to act in an impulsive and a rash nature. It truly felt like we were going on an upward turn through Season 1 and Season 2, and Season 3 just brought us straight back down. And like I said, this is not me implying that she shouldn't be angry or rash in the situation of losing a loved one, but the fact is that WyldFyre's character was set up to be more calm, more evolved, more civilized, and more rational, and this instance truly did take her away from that fact. Of course, in the end, she does get a good moment of using her elemental power to be able to restore him, but the fact is that she became extremely aggressive and extremely angry, for example, towards the bot in the Temple City. And I just think, ultimately speaking, that was kind of just a mistake. This was the opportunity to show how WyldFyre would react in the face of losing a loved one on a much later instance of her personality. And I think truly this was her showing that she was still in a Season 1 form when it came to the situation, which I do think was just a massive error. And I honestly think Season 3 isn't just guilty of putting her back in her Season 1 irrationality. I also think Season 3 was the ultimate downfall of her relationship with Kai as well. I think honestly, she had a really good relationship with him in Season 1 Part 2 and Season 2 Part 1. They were much more of a father-daughter relationship. She was much more calmer with him. She would listen to him. But come Season 3, she just became so much more, again, irrational. If you notice in Season 3 Part 1, there is no instance of Kai and WyldFyre actually sharing moments with each other. There was no meaningful instances of either of them. Of course, the closest you could say is at the end of Season 3 Part 1, where WyldFyre gives Kai off the mech. That's not exactly a meaningful emotional moment. I just don't really attribute it to anything. It was just simply WyldFyre getting out of dodge in the face of a threat. And of course there are other instances in Season 3 of her and Kai not really having the same relationship still. I mean, the only thing that we get that's even remotely close to it is of course their interaction with Roby in Season 3, where Roby sends WyldFyre a message and Kai responds with WyldFyre photobombing the image. And it's a fun little moment, but it doesn't have the emotional beats that we had in the previous seasons between the two of them. And of course, Kai smiling off as WyldFyre is reunited with Roby at the end of Season 3 Part 1 is okay, but ultimately again doesn't hold that same weight. There is no teaching moments between the two. There is no moments of being more emotionally vulnerable with the two, like we did get in those previous seasons. Like I said, Kai opening up about Nia, how he dealt with his grief, and trying to teach WyldFyre those same messages, it's just not there anymore. And obviously, he can't continue to teach the same message, but the fact is that Kai has had a lot of interesting scenarios and a lot of character development over the years. And ultimately, if the whole idea is that WyldFyre is essentially a younger version of Kai, we could have Kai try and teach those moments like he had to before, but there's just none of that, and honestly I just think it's really disappointing to see. But honestly, where do I think WyldFyre should go from here? Now, I don't think she should follow the exact same character arc that we got to see Kai go through. But the fact is that even though WyldFyre needs to maintain her own character, she does need to have something that gives her a reason to continue on in a much more civilized manner. I think honestly she should have handled the Roby situation very differently, and I think the irrational and the hot-headed nature, even though it is within her character, the fact is that the character development that she was getting was honestly steering her away from that fact. And like I said, her interactions with Eagles is the biggest indication of this fact. She had a genuine care and a genuine calmness when it came to Eagles and his situation. So I think ultimately it should have transitioned into other characters as well, but like I said, it just didn't. I just simply think she needs to be set back on this more rational path that she was put on in Season 1 and Season 2. I think she needs to continue, of course, having her trials and having her errors, but the fact is that she also needs to learn a lesson because of it. And WyldFyre could truly become a fantastic character if she does continue on that path. But the fact is that if she doesn't, I do worry that she's just going to devolve back into her feral nature. But regardless of all of this, I do maintain that WyldFyre is a fantastic character and a definite good contrast to the ninja team. She is something that needs to be on the ninja team to give that interesting dynamic that we all know and love. But like I said, even though I think she needs to be more rational, she still needs to maintain what makes WyldFyre as great as she is. But the fact is that she was progressing to have a very nice blend of the WyldFyre-ness and also the more rational thinking that she was having throughout Season 1 and 2. So honestly, with any luck, she does get back onto that path and these issues can be resolved. But as of now, I truly do believe WyldFyre is unfortunately on a path of a more irrational and a more devolved version of herself. And she is honestly recessing back into her Season 1 feel, which honestly is just a shame, because where all the other characters were evolving, I feel like she simply isn't, and it's honestly just quite a shame to see. But that, in my opinion, is the problem with WyldFyre, and I really do hope that this doesn't continue on for future seasons to come. But what do you guys think of the character of WyldFyre? Is she someone that you like? Is she someone that you dislike? I would like to know if you feel strongly in either direction. Is she just someone that you don't really care for? I mean, obviously every single character has that for someone, but the fact is that WyldFyre is definitely a very interesting and welcomed addition to the ninja team in Dragon's Rising. But like I said, I just hope that they continue on the path that she was very clearly put on. But ultimately, apart from that, I do think she is still a great addition, and I can't wait to see where she goes next. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. And like I said, is there anything that you would like to say in particular about WyldFyre? I think she is a fascinating character, and if there's a different interpretation, I would definitely love to hear it. And also, are there any other characters that you would like me to talk about? But that, like I said, is about it for today, you guys. And thank you very much for watching, and take care. Okay, bye!